Right.
because he's
Right.
getting ready to pass the torch to a new generation of Americans born in this century
Oh,
and
I knew you were going to do that.
tempered by war. And let's say, Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu Be'amecha Yisrael U'tefilatam B'yahava Tekabel U'tehi L'ratzon Tamid Avodat Yisrael Yisrael Amecha El Karov Lecha Karov Pinel Avodacha V'chonenu Shefa Ruchacha Aleinu V'techazenu Einenu B'shuvcha L'tzion Berachamim Baruch atah Adonai Hamachazir Shechinato
All right, so tonight we begin Davarim, or Deuteronomy, right? The words, the
Yep.
final words of Moses. Did you want to say anything, Gary, about it? Yeah.
I was just gonna. Well, one thing I like to point out when we start doing Divarim in the words is the fact that these are Moses' words, and for a guy who, like early on when God first told him that to go to Pharaoh and to when Moses was trying to give God all these excuses, he was saying like, I am a man that's slow of speech or whatever, and he has the whole book. And like I said in the email, I like the way he summarizes everything, and instead of like when you're reading everything in the Torah and the other books, it'll say, and God spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, Vayadaber Adonai el Moshe v'Aaron et Aaron lemor. Here, like Moses will say, God spoke to me. Adonai daber Eli, to me. It's all like first person, and well, there's other themes I'd like to talk about later, but I don't want to spend too much time now, like Rabbi Alon. So I will rub my beard and turn it over to you. Okay?
One point now, you're confusing
These
me.
are the words that Moses addressed to all Israel on the other side of the Jordan, through the wilderness, in the Arabah near Suf, between Paran and Tophel, Laban, Hazeroth, and Dizab. It is 11 days from Orab to Kadesh Barnea by the Mount Seir route. It was in the 40th year, on the first day of the 11th month, that Moses addressed the Israelites in accordance with the instructions that the Eternal had given him for them. After he had defeated Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon, and King Og of Bashan, who dwelt at Ashtaroth and Andre, on the other side of the Jordan in the land of Moab, Moses undertook to expound this teaching. He said, The Eternal, our God, spoke to us at Oreb, saying, "You have stayed long enough at this mountain. Start out and make your way to the hill country of the Amorites, and to all their neighbors in the Arabah, the hill country, the Sephalah, and the Negev, the sea coast, the land of the Canaanites, and the Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. See, I place the land at your disposal. Go take possession of the land that the Eternal swore to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to assign to them and to their heirs after them." Keep going. "Thereupon I said to you, I cannot bear the burden of you by myself. The Eternal your God has multiplied you until you are today as numerous as the stars in the sky. May the Eternal, the God of your ancestors, increase your numbers 1,000-fold and bless you as promised. How can I bear unaided the trouble of you and the burden and the bickering? Pick from each of your tribes representatives who are wise, discerning, and experienced, and I will appoint them as your heads." You answered me and said, "What you propose to do is good." So I took you tribal leaders, wise and experienced representatives, and appointed them as heads over you. Chiefs of thousands, chiefs of hundreds, chiefs of 50s, and chiefs of 10s, and officials for your tribes. I charged your magistrates at that time as follows: Hear out your fellow Israelites and decide justly between anyone and a fellow Israelite or a stranger. You shall not be partial in judgment. Hear out low and high alike. Fear no one, for judgment is God's. In any matter that is too difficult for you, you shall bring to me, and I will hear it. Thus I instructed you at that time about the various things that you should do.
You know what fascinates me? All of these names that poor Annie had to read. Of all those names, there are just a few that I can identify that are still in existence today. I mean, Lebanon, we know. Tigris and Euphrates, I guess those rivers stayed the same for years. But there are a lot of names of places we've never heard of and probably will never hear of again. Anybody have any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think there's some parts of the land is still there, the Negev, right? And
Right.
some other parts. But yeah, it's like anything else, right? I mean, Constantinople and Timbuktu, right? Or
Yeah. Istanbul,
and
Constantinople.
Istanbul is Constantinople, right? Oh well.
Didn't you learn that song?
Yeah, I know. That's always a helpful.
Bangladesh.
Because some of those are such tongue twisters. That's one of the reasons they probably eliminated them.
Maybe. One of the things that really stands out to me in these whole verses is just how Moses delegated his responsibilities as the great leader that he was. And you can see where we kind of get this representative government from all this Torah, and you can see it. And what do you think, Gary?
But you got to remember where Moses got it from, though. His father-in-law.
That's right. That's what I was
Jethro.
thinking.
It was Yitro.
Now,
And
what
that's
was
one of the Torah portions that's named after somebody who's not Jewish.
Right, because his father-in-law wasn't Jewish, and his father-in-law was watching him, right? Because Moses would do what? He would listen to everybody? Is that how it went?
Yep, all day long, like the people would be lying, like from morning and early until late, And he said, "What are you doing to yourself? The people need, basically that if he destroys himself, what good will he be to the people? So he needs to delegate."
Excellent, yeah, and it's fascinating. And then this is really jumps out at me. It says, "Fear no one, fear no one, for the judgment is God's," and that's so important. When we have faith, we have no fear. There's no fear when we have total faith, and it's just like, okay, we'll just try to do what God hopes and expects of us, and I think
Even
that's
the Christian message of Jesus, right? Have no fear.
have no fear. God is with us always. It's the eternal promise. And
If you guys hadn't, somebody said it, I forgot that Moses' father-in-law was with them. Because wasn't he a chief or something? He was a big shot, in the desert. So I'm trying to figure out what, besides his daughter, prompted him to go along.
That's a
Anybody
good question.
know?
Cynthia, I think you're muted. Hold on. Can I see you? Can't see you.
I think the Midianites had a high moral code, and the father, I think Moses got a lot of his ideas from his wife's father, who was the head of the Midianites. That was that's what I had assumed. That's what I had heard at some point.
At
through my
that point,
life.
maybe, but because then afterwards, the Midianites were the ones that were leading them down to the, path of ruin, which was when we read about Balaam and Balak.
Oh yeah.
Anyone want to pick it up?
So
This is
adorable.
like a big history lesson here because we're going through all the whole thing here, right, Gary? That's cool. Does anyone want to pick up reading
Yeah.
from 19?
I can read.
Awesome.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
I can read. We set out from Horeb and traveled the great and terrible wilderness that you saw, along the road to the hill country of the Amorites, as the Eternal our God has commanded us. When we reached Kadesh Barnea, I said to you, you have come to the hill country of the Amorites, which the Eternal our God is giving to us. See, the Eternal your God has placed the land at your disposal. Go up, take possession, as the Eternal, the God of your fathers, promised you. Fear not, and be not dismayed. Then all of you came to me and said, let us send emissaries ahead for reconnoiter. I can't pronounce that word properly.
To reconnoiter.
Okay, the land for us, and bring back word on the route we shall follow and the cities we shall come to. I approved of the plan, and so I selected from among you 12 representatives, one from each tribe. They made for the hill country, came to the Wadi Escol, and spied it out. They took some of the fruit of the land with them and brought it down to us. And they gave us this report: it is a good land that the Eternal our God is giving to us. Yet you refused to go up and flouted the command of the Eternal your God. You sulked in your tents and said, it is out of hatred for us that the Eternal brought us out of the land of Egypt, to hand us over to the Amorites to wipe us out. What kind of place are we going to? Our brothers have taken the heart out of us, saying, we saw there a people stronger and taller than we, large cities with walls sky high and 7 Anakites. I said to you, have no dread or fear of them. None other than the Eternal your God who goes before you will fight for you, just as God did for you in Egypt before your very eyes. And in the wilderness, where you saw how the Eternal your God carried you, as a householder carries his son, all the way that you traveled until you came to this place. Yet for all that, you have no faith in the Eternal your God, who goes before you on your journeys to scout the place where you are to encamp, in fire by night and in cloud by day, in order to guide you on the route you are to follow. The Eternal heard your loud command and became angry and vowed, not one of the men counted at the census. This evil generation shall see the good land that I swore to give to your fathers. None except Caleb, son of Jephunneh. He shall see it, and to him and his descendants will I give the land on which you set foot, because he remained loyal to the Eternal. Because of you, the Eternal was incensed with me too, saying, you shall not enter it either. Joshua, son of Nun, who attends you, he shall enter it. Imbue him with strength, for he shall allot it to Israel. Moreover, your little ones you said and would be carried off, your children who do not yet know good from bad, they shall enter it. To them will I give it, and they shall possess it. As for you, turn about and march into the wilderness by the way of the Sea of Reeds.
Oh boy! Wow, that's a
Poor Moses.
I know.
That is so great. I just love the way he's ripping them. But it's the right time to, though. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because he's
Right.
getting ready to pass the torch to a new generation of Americans born in this century.
Oh, I
and
knew you were going to do that.
tempted by war and no, but it's the time. Seriously, when the president is ready to leave the White House, usually a few nights before inauguration, like when Ike made his speech about the military-industrial complex. There were certain things you could talk about at that time that you can't and the people were more receptive to it. And I would talk about that some more a little later.
Oh yeah. That's interesting. Does anyone else have any comments on this? I mean, this is kind of this is one of my favorite parts of Torah because, I mean, it even as heart-wrenching as it can be to say, my gosh, you know, God's going to have to wait. He's going to make them wait another generation. And I mean, isn't that somewhat harsh? But I've felt this in my own life when God has given me something and I said, I'm not really that excited about it. And then I've had to wait, you know, and you can see, I mean, these are all, you know, lessons, you know, they're lessons. And I mean, it's so fascinating just how the world is set up. And this is part of it, you know, God gives us these gifts and we can say no. And we have the free will to say, not really into it. And then you realize like, a couple of years later down the road, oh wow, when that
What did I
happened, maybe I
do?
should have done that. Anyway,
And that we're all responsible for each other.
Annie
Like,
first and then Kevin.
they could have all gone if they didn't, you know what I mean? Like Moses can't go because everybody didn't do what they were supposed to, you know what I mean? You're all in it together. Like your weakest link is what's going to keep you back. You know, if you don't reach back and keep the people that you're supposed to be traveling with steady and going forward, then you're never going to get there.
Great point. Great point. Go ahead, Kevin. Go ahead.
But don't you think that he was waiting for Egypt to come out of all the older Jews that were traveling?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
get rid of that and
Yep.
start off with a new life without having the old baggage follow you.
Right, and that's transformation. See, like change.
Right.
We always talked about change happened. You know, the night
how can
they
you-
left
how
Egypt,
can
that's change. That happens instantly. Transformation takes time.
How can you move forward if you're bringing your baggage along?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All
Yep.
the people are just going to keep saying, "Oh, this is what it was like in Egypt. Why did we leave?"
Oh yeah, all of a sudden it's great.
Yep.
Right.
And
Good
you know what
point,
I
Kevin.
really think too, and that you guys brought this up to my attention just now too, is like I always kind of blame Moses a little bit for it, but then again I'm thinking about it again and it's like he couldn't move these people if they didn't want to move. I mean, he had two people that were following God's direction and all the rest were saying, no, we're you know, they were sulking in their tents. So I have to give Moses credit for just sticking it out and saying they're not moving, they're not. What can I do? You know, I mean, it's you know, he's a great leader. Every time I read the Torah, I'm like always amazed that he had such a tough job.
Did you see that thing? My cousin had sent it to me. I said I watch, you know, like the Smithsonian Channel and National Geographic and all of these. And one of the things they pointed out is that they were examining, you know, there was a person who was examining the pyramids, not, you know, here, but by judging it and by doing some dimensions, said that an architect had to be behind this because it was too specific, that slaves could never have built these pyramids. And they supposedly have proof, but my thinking on the other hand was, this is wrong to say it that way because architects design things now and then people build according to what the architects have said.
Right.
So I don't understand why people say, no, Moses couldn't have, I mean, yeah, the Hebrews couldn't have done this.
Right.
But I have it someplace and I'll show it to you one of these days and you can see what you want to do with it.
All right. Thanks.
Have you heard? I mean, I understand that from an architect's point of view, they go point to point and, you know, they claim that the measurements are so specific that there had to be an architect behind it.
That
Oh,
would
yeah.
be God.
Yeah, it was.
Aren't the drawings and stuff too? Aren't they in the Chumashim, in the plowed commentary books? I think they have all those
Is that right?
in the. I think
All I
so.
know is that we cannot build we cannot build the pyramids with our modern equipment. I've read that, and I think Kevin knows.
All right.
I think we've talked about this. Yeah, we can't. We
I'll
don't
think of
have
a
machines big enough to move the rocks in the way they were. They were put in place so precisely.
All fit perfectly.
Yes, it fits so perfectly together that what I've done a little research on it, and what I've come to understand is that part of that might have been technology that was before the flood, and then when God wiped out the earth and kind of cleared the palette again, that a lot of that technology went away. That's some theories go with that, because
Yeah, you look at Stonehenge too. All the they were
Yeah.
able to put
There's
that
a-
up previous.
There's a similar edifice like Stonehenge, and is it Mexico? I don't remember
Yeah,
exactly. where
Yep.
I can't think of the name.
Mayan
yeah.
Machu Picchu or something. Is
Yeah,
it?
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, it's in Chile, I think, and that they have these huge stones, and they fit together like puzzles, and they even cut things out of the rock, and they say we don't have a machine that can cut this. Maybe a laser could, but it would take forever. But anyway,
Remember
Are we
the
getting
book
off-
Chariots of the God?
Chariots of the Gods. Yeah, that's right.
That's when they talked about that.
All right, shall we get back to Torah? Does anyone want to read 41? Anyone want to read? I can take it.
You read it. Go ahead. You
All
read
right. So Moses said, "You replied to me, saying, we stand guilty before the Eternal. We will go up now and fight, just as the Eternal our God commanded us. And the men among you each girded yourselves with war gear and recklessly started for the hill country. But the Eternal One said to me, warn them, do not go up and do not fight, since I am not in your midst. Else you will be routed by your enemies. I spoke to you, but you would not listen. You flouted the Eternal's command and willfully marched into the hill country. Then the Amorites who lived in those hills came out against you like so many bees and chased you, and they crushed you at Hormor in Seir. Again, you wept before the Eternal, but the Eternal would not heed your cry or give ear to you. Thus, after you had remained at Kadesh all that long time, we marched back into the wilderness by the way of the Sea of Reeds, as the Eternal had spoken to me, and skirted the hill country of Seir a long time."
Yeah.
Do you want me to continue? Then the Eternal One said to me, you have been skirting this hill country long enough. Now turn north, and charge the people as follows. You will be passing through the territory of your kin, the descendants of Esau, who live in Seir. Though they will be afraid of you, be very careful not to provoke them. For I will not give you of their land so much as a foot can tread on. I have given the hill country of Seir as a possession to Esau. What food you drink, you shall obtain from them for money. Even the water you drink, you shall procure from them for money. Indeed, the Eternal your God has blessed you in all your undertakings. God has watched over your wanderings through this great wilderness. The Eternal your God has been with you these past 40 years, and you have lacked nothing. Wow. Are you surprised? I mean, is this the first time we hear of God telling him don't touch Esau's land? Or is it the Edomites? Esau is Edom, correct?
But think how far back that goes.
Right. That's before the enslavement in Egypt. Yeah.
With Esau. That's amazing to me.
Right. So everyone remembers who Esau is, right? He's Jacob's
brother.
Right. And he was older, and Jacob
Jacob
traded his birthright for the lentil soup.
The pottage.
The pottage.
He wasn't much older, but
yeah. Oh, that's right. They were
he
twins.
just came out first with Jacob grabbing his heel.
That's right.
But his mother was the one who favored him over
That's
Esau.
right. That's right. And I just want to bring it to your attention the way God spoke. This goes back to even Abraham's, the covenant with Abraham. All of Abraham's children had a covenant with how they were going to get land and things. Even Ishmael, even when God talks to Abraham about Ishmael, is that correct, Gary? Because I know it's in the
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
well, God said, I don't remember who God tells. Maybe he tells Sarah or Hagar that Ishmael will be, or he tells Abraham too that Ishmael will be a nation.
right, and he'll have princes of the like 12 princes beneath him or something, and
So
so
are
Yeah,
those are the Arabs the descendants of
Hagar.
that's right.
and
That's what
Ishmael. Yeah.
is
Yeah,
popularly
goes
believed.
back to Hagar, who's the mother.
Right. That's
so
why
what
we
was
say that the Muslim Christians and Jews are all come from they're
Abraham.
Abrahamic. They're Abrahamic traditions. So, and we get ours through the Christians get it through Jesus somewhat. Way to go!
Nice
we snuck
Jewish
in.
rabbi.
And but the Muslims believe in they're from the Ishmael line. But what do you think of that, though? Isn't that amazing that it's important for God to keep that His promise to Esau's descendants too?
You know what gets me though? Going back when he said, "Don't go up this hill because you're going to be in trouble,"
Yeah.
and I'm not with you, and they go anyway. I just don't understand what hubris on their part. I mean, think of it. God has been with you. He's done things for you, and now you don't do it, and you still go ahead and do it. That's not too right.
Yeah, it's a tough lesson.
Sure is, but I can't understand what possessed them. Maybe they've been drinking first.
Well, I think that too is that I mean I know of like let's just call it men stuff, men problems, right? They get a little victory underneath their belt, and now they think they're just like, yeah, we can take anything, we can do whatever we want, shish cam, boom, 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 fire up the works, and so I think there's a lot of that, and that comes up with King David too. God says to King David sometimes, "You're going too fast, you're going too far. We got to slow it down a little bit." There's an echo in here, I think. Does anyone want to read number 8? Kevin or Iris?
I
Or
had a
Ellie?
comment. Well, I had a comment. You
Go
were
ahead.
talking about building the pyramids and all of that and all. I drove across the country about 10 years ago, maybe
Did you?
longer than that. And when I came to the Rockies, I could not believe how amazing those Rockies were. And the thought that then they're gigantic and they go on forever, how man could, it's the thought that I had when you were talking about that, the pyramids. I could not believe how man could build these roads through the Rockies. And it goes on for such a long time, all the way across to California. And it reminded me that God had to have a big part in building those roads going through those huge, huge mountains.
Yep.
And I just thought of that when you were talking about that anything is possible. And why not?
That's great. That's a
Right.
great thought. That's awesome because we need more of that attitude, I think, nowadays, as we're all quarantined somewhat.
Where are we?
Number 8. Do you see number 8? We then moved on.
We then moved on away from our kin, the descendants of Esau, who live in Seir, away from the road of the Arabah, away from Elath and Etzion Geber, and we marched on in the direction of the wilderness of Moab. And the Eternal One said to me, "Do not harass the Moabites or provoke them to war, for I will not give you any of their land as a possession. I have assigned Ar as a possession to the descendants of Lot." He remembers exactly which ones he gave.
Exactly.
Wow. It was formerly inhabited by the Emim, a people great and numerous and as tall as the Anakites. Like the Anakites, they are counted as Rephaim, but the Moabites call them Emim. Similarly, I have no idea what I'm saying. Similarly, Seir was formerly inhabited by the Horites, but the descendants of Esau dispossessed them, wiping them out and settling in their place, just as Israel did in the land they were to possess, which the Eternal had given to them. This is our changing things constantly. We don't like you people. You're going to go away. I'm giving this land to somebody else. You wonder how many years have these people inhabited this land before they started losing it again. I just find this whole thing mind-boggling.
That's why we're here, trying to get through it. Anyone else want to pick up at 13 or have a comment? Or
What's the Wadi Zered?
the Wadis? Cross the Wadi Zered. You know what? I'll Google that. Let's go to Google. Wadi Zered. What's that? Zered?
Z-E-R-E-D.
The Wadis, that's gotta be water there.
Z-E-R-E-D. Wadi Zered. Wadi al-Hassa is now what it's called. Wadi.
But what does it actually say about what a wadi means?
Wadi Zered is the border between the mountains of Edom to its south and the mountains of Moab to its north. So it's a mountain range.
Yeah, but it must have something in between, like, water or...
It looks like pictures of water there.
Yeah.
That looks like it. That looks like it. What do I do? Like images. Let's go to the images.
There's water there.
Yeah, there's all water. Maybe water between mountains.
Yeah.
Ah.
Well, I always think of water. Wadi is someplace where you go and you can draw water from something. You water your camels or whatever.
Looks wonderful. Wow. Amazing.
Yeah, it looks nice.
Yeah.
Well, water is always outpowers. Like water seems very, quiet and stuff, but water is very powerful. It erodes the mountains. It moves the mountains.
And
The water does.
And like those waterfalls, they supply electricity.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Good to know.
And water flows, nothing gets in its way.
Right.
Water.
Yep.
What
It
were you
just
saying?
flows.
Yeah.
Oh, nothing profound. I said it's good to know if I ever have a camel and I'm there, I have places to water them. Profound.
We'll expect you to remember that, Cynthia.
No kidding.
She will remember that.
Water your camel.
All right, taking it up from 13. Anybody, Kevin or Iris? We haven't heard from you yet.
I'll read.
Oh, Ellie. Yes, Ellie.
Up now, cross the Wadi Zered, now that we know what it is. So we crossed the Wadi Zered. The time that we spent in travel from Kadesh Barnea until we crossed the Wadi Zered was 38 years, until the whole generation of warriors had perished from the camp, as the Eternal had sworn concerning them. Indeed, the hand of the Eternal struck them to root them out from the camp until they were finished off. When all the warriors among the people had died off, the Eternal One spoke to me, saying, "You are now passing through the territory of Moab through Ar. You will then be close to the Ammonites. Do not harass them or start a fight with them, for I will not give any part of the land of the Ammonites to you as a possession. I have assigned it as a possession to the descendants of Lot."
So isn't that interesting? That's the second time we hear of the descendants of Lot.
Lot, yeah.
And it's amazing because I just think it's amazing that God doesn't forget those from Abraham's tribe. It's just
Way back.
Yeah, way back.
God doesn't forget anything.
That's
Be careful.
right.
Think before you speak or act.
Do you want to continue, Ellie?
Yeah, sure. It too is counted as Rephaim country. It was formerly inhabited by Rephaim, whom the Ammonites call Zamzummim, a people great and numerous and as tall as the Anakites. The Eternal wiped them out, so that the Ammonites dispossessed them and settled in their place, as God did for the descendants of Esau, who live in Seir by wiping out the Horites before them, so that they dispossessed them and settled in their place, as is still the case. So too with the Avim, who dwelt in villages in the vicinity of Gaza, the Caphtorim, who came from Crete, wiped them out and settled in their place. Up, set out across the Wadi Anon. See, I give into your power Sion the Amorite, king of Heshbon and his land. Begin the occupation, engage him in battle. This day I begin to put the dread and fear of you upon the peoples everywhere under heaven, so that you shall tremble and quake because of you whenever they hear you mentioned. That's all I can see. Can't see any more, Mike.
Nope. It's up again.
Does anyone have any words about that? That's it's weird. As you were reading this, Ellie, I was thinking about, like, it just seems like this is kind of the history of the world anyway, right? I mean, it always seems like one group overcomes another group, overcomes another group, overcomes another group. And I mean, it just seems like that's what happens after so many years, you know? I don't know.
You know, I sit here and I think about this now. God he chose the Israelites, and we chose him, a kind of a mutual choosing. But think of all, you don't think of all the other tribes that were floating around that were probably, I assume, praying to images of gods. And I say to myself, why didn't God just make everybody Jewish? We wouldn't have all this problem.
I think he did eventually. I think we're all kind of in the same camp right now. That's the way I look at it. That's why I do the multi-faith festival stuff. It's like we're all kind of, once, because each one, I mean, the Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they have the same tenets, which are love God and love your neighbor. Those are kind of like, they go across all the different realms. And
God had to tell us to love our neighbors, because honestly, I don't think we automatically do.
That's true.
Right.
But
You know what I don't understand?
Well, I that last statement, I have a tendency not to believe that, because when we're born, we have no animosity against any of our people that we come to meet, and it only comes to us until we're like after 5, when we learn these things from our parents.
Mm-hmm.
So
Amen.
if you put 2 3-year-olds together, they're gonna get along fine, no matter what or who they are.
Amen, Kevin. Love it. And that's the other thing too, and I think that's one of the big kind of mistakes, if you will, that we teach each other, is that there's not enough of everything to go around. And so if I have this,
Absolutely.
whatever it is, you can't have this because I have this. And I think that's kind of, I think God gives us plenty to go around. It's just that we somehow got it in our brains that, oh no, there's not enough of this, there's not enough of that. And yes, we are destroying our environment as we speak. But I'm interested in hearing more, though. That was great, Kevin. Thanks. Iris, you got an idea? Something?
It's a fear. When people have fear about the people, they start thinking things that aren't true. It's like fear, we learn, well, an acronym was fear, false evidence is fear and real. And fear is the same with everything. People fear that other people are going to take them over, they're not going to, like you said, they're not going to have enough. And it's not really true. They want to be the, I don't know, they just want to be the best.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Iris. That's exactly how I feel. Like that a lot of it is fear. A lot of it is fear.
And competitiveness.
Right. Absolutely.
Ego.
All right. Anybody want to read? Iris, do you want to read?
Okay, if you hear an echo, let me know, so.
No, it's good now.
Then I sent messages from the wilderness of Kedemos, the king Sihon of Hezbon with an offer of peace as follows. Let me pass through your country. I will keep strictly to the highway, turning off neither to the right nor to the left. What food I eat you will supply for money, and what water I drink you will furnish for money. Just let me pass through. As the descendants of Esau who dwell in Seir did for me, and the Moabites who dwell in Ar, that I may cross the Jordan to go land of the eternal I thought had given me. The king Sihon of Hezbon refused to let us pass through because the Eternal had shifted his will and hardened his heart in order to deliver him into our power, as is now the case. And the Eternal One said to me, see, I begin by placing Sihon and his land at your disposal. Begin the occupation, take possession of his land. Sihon with all his troops took the field against us as did us, and doomed, and the Eternal our God delivered him to us, and we defeated him and his sons and all his troops. At that time we captured all his towns and resumed every town, men, women, and children, leaving no survivor. We retained as booty only cattle and spoil of the city that we captured. From Arrow's area on the edge of Anon Valley, including the town the valley itself is Gilead, not a city was too much for us. The Eternal our God delivered everything to us, but we did not encroach upon the land of the Ammonites, all along the Wadi Dibok and the towns of the hill country, just as the Eternal our God had commanded. We made our way up the road toward John and King Og of the John, with all the troops took the field against us at Edrei. But the Eternal One said to me, do not fear him, for I am delivering him and all his troops in his country into your power, and you will do to him as you did to the Sihon king of Amorites who lived in Heshbon.
Great stuff.
No, I feel sorry for those people.
Me
God
too.
hardened their hearts, told them not to sell this stuff, and then he kills them. That's not very nice.
You're right. It's not. But doesn't it? It kind of harkens back to Pharaoh, doesn't it? When we had that portion early on, it was Exodus, right?
Yeah.
And you kept, and you, there was that great interplay between Moses saying, let my people go, and Pharaoh, and I think the phrase was God hardened his heart.
It's hard, yeah, each time.
So it's an interesting phrase, and it's worth meditating upon to see how much we might think of an adversary as, I don't know, something that. I mean, granted, I'm not trying. I think we're all done the violence. I hope in our society. I really do. I really hope we're done. But it's hard to kind of maybe wrap one's mind around these things because of the violence that was done.
Yeah, that's what bothers me. I mean, this guy had supposedly, this was a fixed thing. God changed, God had him say, no, I'm not going to sell this to you. So now, of course, you have a skirmish that comes, well, more than a skirmish. And then we wipe out these people, and it isn't their fault. That bothers me.
We're with you. We're with you. I know it bothers Cynthia too.
Big time.
I mean, I know it's a means to an end, but I wouldn't want to be on that part of the seesaw. Really.
Yeah.
God does it to the Jewish people too, though.
No
Remember,
question.
he stiffens their necks, and they talk about that he stiffens their necks. So part of the reason that they're stubborn and they keep doing things with their own will is because God made them that way. God's in control of the whole thing. We just have to make the choices, and it's
And part of the hardening of the heart was so that God could keep giving the signs to show the strength.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Two
but
in
God
the
is in
road.
control. We're supposed to have free will, and then we do what we wish.
Yeah.
And pay the consequences, cause and effect.
Yeah, and it's also the lessons that this is all lessons, right? And that's the important thing, to hear these lessons and to try to make sense of them in our own time. And but I do like free will, but there's also it's some people. There's some Kabbalists who say there's no free will, but we do have choices, and which is a very, it's like slicing the onion real close, and it's worth thinking about in some ways,
Isn't that what free will is? Right?
Well, I think what it is that there's like a whole overarching it's like if you take like a whole play or a whole like movie, like the whole story of the movie, it's going to go from point A to point B. And then in that point A and point B, there are choices that we make. But in the end, we're going to get to point B no matter what the choice is. So the will of God and our will hopefully gets us to point B where we need to be. But sometimes in the middle of the movie, we might make different choices. But the overarching movie is called the will. Does that make any sense?
And then it depends on, and it
makes
will determine
it
whether
makes a little bit of sense, but you got to
Like I was
think.
thinking about the book, The Road Less Traveled,
Right.
and when, there's choices that we make, but I think that if you make the highest choice, you're doing God's will.
And you may not have to travel for 40 years in the desert. You may travel a lot
right.
less.
Well, what were you
You're
going to
on the
add,
right
Kevin?
path.
Kevin was going to add something.
Well, if you're getting from point A to point B in the story, and you have free will, that free will, it depends what you're going to wind up with at point B. If you take one road, you might end up with no money in your pocket. If you take the other road, you might wind up with a pocket that's full and overflowing
That's
with milk
great.
and honey.
That's
But maybe ending up with no money might be the best road for you to take. Maybe
Right.
it might lead you to something else that might be more important than
Not if
having a
you're in the
pocket full
story
of.
from point A to point B. Point B is the end. Point A is the start, point B is the end. I'd like to be with milk and honey towards the end and not with holes in my pocket.
and the other thing too is that who says that point B kind of is the end of, maybe our lives, maybe point B continues beyond us and beyond
Well, that would
our
be
lives here.
part two in your story.
Well, we're always supposed to.
That's the
like
sequel.
in the story of Passover, we're always supposed to feel like no matter where we are, that there's an aspect of wherever we are that's still Egypt, and that there still could be a better place where we can ultimately be.
Well, I will tell you something. Never follow me if I have to pick a road to travel, because no matter what I do, I always pick the wrong one, and I cannot find my way back anyway. I have no sense of direction. So never
So
follow
you got
me.
one of those bumper stickers that says "Don't follow me, I'm lost."
I'm already lost.
I should have.
Yeah.
You always find your way back to us, Myrna.
Well, that's different. I have a goal. It's very, very sweet at the end. No, but even, in the shopping center, in the North Shore, I would go into a store, I'd come back out and say, do I want to go right or do I want to go left? And no matter which way I picked that day, I should have gone the other way. So like I said, don't follow me.
I know the feeling because when I'm in the store, I always get in the wrong line.
Ah.
I can
Always.
sympathize with that.
Anyone else? Cynthia or Annie or Gary?
I can read it.
Sure.
Okay. So the Eternal our God also delivered into our power King Og of Bashan with all his troops, and we dealt them such a blow that no survivor was left. At that time we captured all his towns. There was not a town that we did not take from them. 60 towns, the whole district of Argob, the kingdom of Og and Bashan. All those towns were fortified with high walls, gates, and bars, apart from a great number of unwalled towns. We doomed them as we had done in the case of King Shaun of Heshbon. We doomed every town, men, women, and children, and retained as booty all the cattle and the spoil of the towns. Thus we seized at that time from the two Amorite kings the country beyond the Jordan, from the Wadi Arnon to Mount Hermon. Sidonians called Hermon Sirion, and the Amorites called it Sinir. All the towns of the tableland and the whole of Gilead and Bashan, as far as Salca and Edrei, the towns of Og's kingdom in Bashan. Only King Og of Bashan was left of the remaining Rephaim. His bedstead, an iron bedstead, is now in Rabbah of the Ammonites. It is 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide by the standard cubit. And this is the land which we apportioned at that time. The part from Aror along the Wadi Arnon, with part of the hill country of Gilead and its towns, I assigned to the Reubenites and the Gadites. The rest of Gilead and all of Bashan under Og's rule. The whole Argob district, all that part of Bashan which is called Rephaim country, I assigned to the half tribe of Manasseh. Jair, son of Manasseh, received the whole Argob district, that is Bashan, as far as the boundary of the Geshenites and the Machathites, and named it after himself, Havoth Jair, as is still the case. To Maher I assigned Gilead, and to the Reubenites and the Gadites I assigned the part from Gilead down to the Wadi Arnon, the middle of the wadi being the boundary, and up to the Wadi Jabbok, the boundary of the Ammonites. We also seized the Arabah from the foot of the slopes of Pisgah on the east to the edge of the Jordan, and from Shenareth down to the Sea of Arabah, the Dead Sea. At that time I charged you, men of Reuben, Gad, Manasseh, saying, the Eternal your God has given you this country to possess. You must go as shock troops, warriors all, at the head of your Israelite kin. Only your wives, children, and livestock, I know that you have much livestock, shall be left in the towns I've assigned you, until the Eternal has granted your kin a haven such as you have, and they too have taken possession of the land that the Eternal your God is assigning them beyond the Jordan. Then you may return each to the homestead that I have assigned to him. I also charged Joshua at that time, saying, you have seen with your own eyes all that the Eternal your God has done to these two kings. So shall the Eternal do to all the kingdoms into which you shall cross over. Do not fear them, but it is the Eternal your God who will battle for you. Seems like while they were on their way to the promised land, they roughed up a lot of people along the road and the countries and so on. They weren't exactly just wandering. They were doing a lot of damage here and there.
Yep.
Yeah,
Gotta go through hell to get to heaven.
I know.
Where's
I
that
know.
written?
I agree, Cynthia. I know it's a tough thing to see that, but I mean, I hate to say it. It's our history of many people are just are very violent. It's unfortunate. The one thing that kind of stood out to me was the guy's. Was it his? What's a bedsteed? Is that his bed?
I know, that seems to be so important.
Sounds like he's a giant.
That was so important. They had to put it. It was no. Let's say it again. 9 cubits by 4 cubits. By the standard cubit. That's not in the imperial cubit, mind you, or the euro cubit. That's the standard cubit. Whatever
but
that might be.
Michael, there is no standard cubit.
There isn't.
You know what a cubit is?
No.
Is it from here to?
It's the tip to the tip of your elbow.
So
So
everyone's.
my cubit will be different than your cubit.
So 9 cubits. That's pretty big.
Yeah, that's one hell of a bed. That's why they had so many kids.
Now they had to go and redo the map because this map is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything's changed the
It
same.
depends whose cubit you were using.
I'll take you, Kevin. You can be my cubit when I need something. I'll take you to measure.
Fantastic. All right.
My arms are too short. I wouldn't get anything.
Uh,
Oh, you know what I'd like to know? It says God is going to be doing this for you. How do you think there were any Israelites who also died in this? I mean, it can't be all just the opposite side. Don't you think
Oh.
that some of them died,
I would imagine, yeah. It's
but
a
they don't
war.
say anything?
Yeah. I mean, they did.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
my thing is, and still now where I have problems with any part of the religion, is if God is the person we is what we think he is, our supreme being, why does he let us handle the misery when the people that he put down here, why did he let them get so rowdy in the first place?
Mm.
Couldn't he have? You would think that our significant other would have said, wait a minute, before this gets out of hand, because I know what the future's going to be, I'm going to take care of it now in the year 0001, and everything's going to be fine.
I think it's
Or
because no,
are
I was
they
gonna say I
letting
think it's
us? Go ahead, Gary.
no, I was gonna say that um, that in other words, like the whole idea of like the children of Israel, the children of Jacob, or whatever, being formed was like the monotheism and the belief in God. So like God created humanity, but like maybe good big hunks of humanity didn't acknowledge or understand God and were idolatrous or whatever they were. So the whole reason that like when Abraham recognized God, then God wanted to create like a group of people that would be to demonstrate to the rest of humanity or to as much of humanity as possible the monotheistic idea that we're all created by God, that would as opposed to all the there was a reason why we had to go through all these other countries, and there was a reason why the people that were in the promised land that God was giving us were being displaced. And it wasn't, and again, God says it's not because, basically in the Torah, it says it's not because you are all so great in any way, it's because they're so bad. So God was just trying to establish belief in God's self.
Well, don't you think our supreme being knows that us as human beings that we have these flaws because back in Adam and Eve
Yep,
they couldn't be trusted.
that's right.
That's right.
And
And
there was
that's
And
murder right at the beginning too.
Yeah.
he right then he said he could have fixed it. He could have went back into the gene pool and said, well, let's tweak this and tweak that.
he's a great scientist. Wow, that really shows up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's because God wants us to this is my personal opinion. Um I feel like it's because God doesn't want us to be um what's the word? Like robots or animatons, or
Hmm.
I think he really wants us to be fully human and fully divine in the same way. And for us to go through these things gets us on that path. And as Gary was pointing out, many times throughout history, many people, including the Israelites, including Jews, including Muslims, including Christians, we tend to go off the path, and we start praying, or it's not even we pray. A lot of it's just complete neglect of really thanking God and really having God in our lives. And then we take things and then we make that God. We take things that aren't God and make it God. Like some people who are obsessed with sports. Sometimes they get up in the morning, they see sports every day, blah blah blah, and they're going crazy now because the sports are just coming back now. But it's that same idea. Or sometimes it's the military. Sometimes people are so focused on the military, they don't even think about God at all. Whereas God gave us this country as a free people that will accept all different people of different races and religions and everything, but we still can't get our head around it. Like, we're one through God, but we tend to ignore God completely, or it's the economy, or it's like sex, or it's something else that becomes our God. So
You're talking about an addiction.
yeah, yes, I think that's it.
What's an addiction? Everything can become an addiction. Whatever.
And I don't remember where I read this, but it was talking about the importance of being able, having the ability to receive criticism, being worthy of receiving criticism, and having the ability to criticize. Because now the way Moses was kind of criticizing the children of Israel, but he loved them, and vice versa. And they were more receptive to what he was saying now. So even though he's kind of saying these things to them, it's just like when somebody that you're in a close relation, if somebody loves you, and they usually in the right way can give you critique, which really helps you improve yourself. It's a real gift and a blessing to be able to receive good critique. And it's a blessing to be able to give somebody that you love good critique. So that's what I really, that's something that I like also. Like I say, in Deuteronomy, Moses now gets to, but he's really giving them good information. He's saying, we were supposed to do this, but you didn't want to do this, so we had to do this. It's like it's important that they, aside from recounting the history of all the lands that they had to go through and kick Tuchasin to get where they were going, but it's just an important thing, like, to think about. Like, the information that he was giving them was, like, really important if they're receptive to it. So it's just something to think about, the ability to receive good criticism and to be worthy of it. Because if somebody's giving you that kind of criticism, it's a blessing. And if you are able, likewise, to do that, if you're able to do that for someone you care about, like my honey pie, for example. I mean, she makes me better all the time.
Nice.
What a sweetheart,
Vice
But
versa.
that's because we can do that. That's what you're supposed to. But that's like an example, though. That's an example.
Right.
But it's just something I just wanted to mention because it's one of the themes that I really like about this. I think it's so applicable. It's so relevant and so.
This is just fantastic, and I think the big thing for the whole, I mean, I love what Gary was saying, because isn't that part of all of Deuteronomy, Gary? That the whole business.
A lot of it, yeah. It's all like summary, and that's why, like, there again, like, the idea too that, like, Moses is teaching them that they have to remember their history, so that's why they recount all the places. The lineage. I can't give you this land because I already promised. And there again, God doesn't forget anything.
Yeah.
And break a promise, so that stands.
Exactly.
Mike said he's a good leader, like Moses is a good leader, because you can make people feel like resent what you're trying to say to them, or you can make people be receptive in the way that you present the criticism. Like, if you want somebody, like, he seems to be able to do it in a way that we would like to do that. Like, you don't want to make the person feel discouraged or feel like, oh man, like, there's no hope for doing it better the next time. But if you don't learn from what you did wrong and try and make it better and get that kind of feedback, then if you're just getting pounded all the time, like, from the person, then you don't listen anymore. You don't you don't learn the lesson that you're supposed to learn because you're busy defending yourself.
There again, to say that's it, the ability to criticize, and Moses definitely had it. But that's something that we all need to have because it benefits us personally and it benefits those that are closest to you when you have the ability to point out something that you can help somebody improve because we make each other better. You know?
Hallelujah.
We have that ability to do that if we do it right.
So if it's done with love,
And that's how Moses did it.
yeah.
So maybe we should ask God to not take over territories the next time, to ask him to like leave off a little of that violence so that we can be a little bit more comfortable with that. We don't have to like think about what had to happen for all of these things to come true.
Right.
No, the demeanor of God, or what he represents to us, changes from the beginning as it goes on, because God took on a form or a position when it was necessary. So he would be our champion, getting us into things like this, but he also had a purpose for it. So now when we look at God at this particular stage, we realize that God is pushing us on. He's giving us only what he knows that we can do. But then as the years go on, we don't need a warlike God any longer. And it's like when Amos comes along, and we don't need your, what do you call it, the sacrifices. And there's more peace and love that starts to come in. So does God really take on a different form, or did we cause God to take on that form?
Wow, fantastic.
Very good.
Really good question. And the other thing too that I always get out of Torah is that God never abandons the Israelites, no matter what they do, no matter how they are, no matter what their reaction to different things are. And that's such a beautiful, hopeful message for everybody with faith. It's just like no matter what we're going through, it can be so comforting to know that in the end, God still has us somewhere. There's always going to be a connection.
And those nasty things that happen, like the Holocaust and other things like that, are because God has granted us free will. And hopefully you use it correctly, but many of them don't. Oh my God, we're getting so philosophical.
Hey, we always fight for freedom everywhere.
Yep.
Anybody else?
Free will is one of the biggest things that we have in life.
Yeah.
Is our free will.
My mother had a way of, when people, even my friends, had a problem, they'd come to my mother. And my mother's attitude was, or her famous thing that she liked to say was, "You're going to be fine because you're not a stepchild of God." Meaning you're a child of God, not a stepchild, and God will be with you.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Oh, okay, we all set? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael,